with the military continuing to force this issue. In fact, the President and the Secretary of Defense does not want to go along with the lifting of this mandate, but yet, as I mentioned, let me pull this article up. This started on Monday. On Monday, the Navy began a pilot program that will let in those who have lower scores on part of the entrance exam used to gauge a recruit's ability to serve. Now, this is based on the fact that they have not been able to meet their recruitment goals. In fact, they're even extending the age of those that can enlist to the age of 41. Now, I really want to see somebody who's 41 going through boot camp. That would be interesting. But the reality is they're pushing out healthy, trained individuals simply because they will not bow to this political agenda of the left. Joining me now to talk about this and more is the Executive Vice President of the Family Research Council, retired Lieutenant General Jerry Boykin, who spent 36 and a half years in the military, in the Army, I should say. General, welcome back to the program.
Good to be with you, Tony.
All right, today is the day in which 81 years ago, Japan attacked Pearl Harbor. It's Pearl Harbor Day, and America was just, we were vulnerable. We were not paying attention. Are we moving toward a very similar position of vulnerability today?
Yeah, on several fronts. First of all is the demonstrated lack of leadership in the country at the very highest levels. And all you have to do is look at some of the things that have occurred, some of the decisions that have been made in Afghanistan would be the perfect place to start looking at that. But the other thing is our military is in decline, and there's no question about it. All branches of the service are in decline. And this, it's not just the vaccine. The vaccine has had a significant effect on people in the military, primarily because they've been bullied or they've seen their buddies who were not willing to take the jab. They've seen them being bullied by the same chain of command that tomorrow could take them to war and would be expected to follow this chain of command. But it's also had a significant effect on the young men and women in America who might want to join the military, might want to enlist in the military or go through the commissioning process. And now you see what's happening. They're not coming to the military in significant numbers, certainly not in the adequate numbers to fill the ranks of our military. No service has recruited up to its potential.
But you mentioned the vaccine is not the only thing. The vaccine is really kind of a symbol of the woke agenda, really, because of what they're being taught, the precious training time that is being diverted away, preparing to defend this country, to fight wars, which is the purpose of the military. They're doing all kinds of other nonsense. That's how I would describe it.
There is no question that there is a woke agenda that is unfolding in the military now, and it has been ever since the Biden administration came to office. What was it, the second or third day that our president was in office there when he rolled back the restrictions that Donald Trump had put on having transgenders serve in our military. Now, the question is, why would you want to put people in the military that you know for the next 18 to 24 months are not going to be deployable? And by the way, they're going to take thousands and thousands of dollars for their hormone treatment and their surgery. And you explain to me, with any rationale whatsoever, how that could be enhancing the readiness of our military to meet the threats of the future.
Well, it also speaks to the moral climate of the military. You talk about the recruiting problem. It's not just the vaccination, the shot requirements, the woke agenda, but when you look, and you know this, having led men and women for 36 years in the Army, that disproportionately, not exclusively, but disproportionately, men and women that have a faith foundation are drawn to serve in our nation's military. It's what Jesus said, greater love hath no man than to lay down his life for his friends. I'm not saying that everyone is an evangelical Christian, but there is a disproportionate representation of those type of individuals in our military.
Yeah, let me tell you something else, Tony. The military, all branches, have always relied very heavily upon the southeastern part of the United States to fill the ranks of the military, because you've got a culture there that appreciates service. My dad was one of five boys, 5 brothers that all went off to World War II, and that's part of the culture there. But now even the Commandant of the Marine Corps is saying that they're having real trouble recruiting out of the
Right.
southeastern part of the United States now. That should be a strong indicator of things to come.
Well, it's a hostility toward the faith. I mean, I've got one of these pocket New Testaments from World War II that
I
the
have one
members
too.
of the military were given, and inside there is a message from the Commander-in-Chief, a Democrat president, Franklin D. Roosevelt, and this is what it says: "To members of the Army, as Commander-in-Chief, I take pleasure in commending the reading of the Bible to all who serve in the armed services of the United States. Throughout the centuries, men of many faiths and diverse origins have found in the sacred book words of wisdom, counsel, and inspiration. It is a foundation of strength and now, as always, an aid in attaining the highest aspirations of the human soul. Very sincerely yours, Franklin D. Roosevelt." I mean, can you imagine if a president today were to put such an inscription in a New Testament and handed it to our men and women of the military?
I can't imagine that, no. And I hope that sometime later in the year, you're going to read the D-Day prayer.
Yeah. We play that every
That
year.
same man
You know, I
prayed the
will
D-Day
say this.
prayer.
We were working with the Trump administration about putting that message back into the Bibles that our troops had, because I think we were very close to being able to do that. And that's that moral foundation that is receptive to Christianity or religious expression, but we see the exact opposite. And as long as we have a military that is hostile to faith, you're going to have a difficult time recruiting men and women to serve.
Yes, you are, and you're going to have a difficult time getting moms and dads across America to encourage their sons and daughters to serve as well.
Let's talk about the flip side of that you've mentioned before. So what happens when that vacuum of those men and women of the moral compass is created in our military? What happens?
Well, what you do is you wind up with a generation of people who don't want to have anything to do with the military. And that's because their father, their uncle, their brother, their friend was booted out of the military, was bullied before he was booted out.
So who then serves?
So, well, you wind up with a bunch of mercenaries, exactly what you wind up with. And we do not need a mercenary army. You've got to have a cause. Why do young men and women serve this country? At least in part, it's because of a sense of patriotism, a sense of cause, of being bigger than them individually. But when you have the kind of military that we're going to have, when we start drafting in these people and letting in these people that don't have the aptitude, don't even have the intellect, and I'm sorry for them, but the reality is, if you go on, you've been on a carrier before. I've never seen anything more complex than carrier operations. And I was in the Army, but I did have the privilege to go out and with the John F. Kennedy, and people get killed on the deck of that unless every man is doing exactly what he's supposed to do.
Well, we've seen that just in recent years with the Navy. I mean, running into other ships, surrendering because of the lack of training, and that transcendent cause being really imbued in them as is really part of serving.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And keep in mind that for every hour we are spending in a classroom with our young men and women in the services doing this woke training, whether it's critical race theory or whether it's inclusion or whether it's one of these other woke agendas, it's an hour that they could be spending out on the range or at their battle stations training for the next war.
Yeah.
And there's going to be a next war, and I think it's
we're
going
just,
to be in
we're
China.
inviting it through
Yeah.
weakness. General Jerry Boykin, always great to talk to you. Thanks so much
to be with
for
you, Tom.
joining us today.